What do you mean they should be in here?
They shouldn't be in this room. They should be watching us look at the show.
יש עוד אפשרות לראות לא רק דרך המסך הזה?
כן.
אז איך אתה יודע כמה ראו? איך אתה יודע כמה השתתפו?
פייסבוק, אני יודע. אוקיי. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting in about 2 more minutes. Thank you for your patience. Good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say Zoomers. My name is Dr. Chaim Shaked. I'm the director of the Sue and Leonard Miller Center for Contemporary Judaic Studies and the George Feldenkrais Program in Judaic Studies at the University of Miami. Welcome to this event. Actually, this is the second in a three-part series. Each part was devoted to a book that was written by Professor Miriam Hoffman, the mother of Avi Hoffman, who will be delivering tonight's presentation. The first book dealt with her memoirs. As a little girl in a displaced person camp in Europe after the Holocaust, and then all the way to becoming a professor of Yiddish at the Distinguished University of Columbia in New York. Tonight's lecture will be devoted to a second book that she has written, Legends of the AlefBet, and the third lecture will be devoted to this book, Curious Rabbinic Tales, and again, it will be presented by Avi Hoffman. I don't think Avi needs any introduction to this audience because I think everyone in the Jewish and many in the non-Jewish communities know him very well as a very prominent actor. But there is another side to Avi, which I would like to introduce, and you can see the initials here on the screen, YI. Avi initiated a major program under the title Yiddishkeit Initiative, which aims to bring to public attention the great cultural accomplishments of Yiddish and of the Ashkenazi Jewish communities, including a series of classes in Yiddish and various lectures. I am very proud to say that the Miller Center and Feldenkrais program have been cooperating and will continue to cooperate with this very important initiative. So without further ado, Avi, I invite you to switch on your screen and deliver your presentation.
Thank you. Hashenim Dank Chaim, Chag Sameach, Aziz Ningezitten Pesach to everyone. And I am very honored to have been asked to participate. And I'm very honored to have Chaim and the Feldenkrais program and the Miller Center as a major sponsor of most of the programs that we do. And we've done so much in the last year. We've done festivals and concerts and play readings and lectures. You can find all of our programs on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, as this lecture will be after we're done tonight. So Chaim, without further ado, if you don't mind turning off your video, I will begin our Legends of the AlefBet, the Origins of the Alphabet by Professor Miriam Hoffman, my mother, and we have a treat tonight. She's actually here with me, and after the lecture, if you have questions, those of you who are in the Zoom with us, and those of you on Facebook or YouTube, you can write comments and we'll try to answer them if we can. In any event, this book has artwork, magnificent artwork from 1919 by a very wonderful artist named Ben-Tsiyon Zuckerman. And we also have artwork from a contemporary Jewish artist by the name of Michoel Muchnik. Now, more than 5 millennia ago, a human hand first carved the written word on stone. And so he initiated recorded history. 5,000 years of writing using societally agreed upon alphabets. And so all the letters, practically all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, are related to the ancient Semitic alphabets, which you see on the screen. Among them, Ugaric, Akkadian, Syriac, Phoenician, Ethiopian, Arabic, and Aramaic. The Hebrew alphabet, with some differences, was introduced at the time of the Second Temple, 2,500 years ago, when the Jews returned from Babylonian exile. The old Greek, Latin, and Russian Cyrillic alphabets have roots in our Semitic alphabet. Now, the Jewish people spoke and created in a great many Jewish languages, which helped them survive for 2,000 years of exile. All the Jewish languages were written using the Hebrew alphabet. Among the longest surviving Jewish languages, not including Hebrew, Aramaic, and Ladino, is Yiddish, which is over 1,000 years old. Now, the 22 letters of the AlefBet, the Hebrew alphabet, are the fundamental building blocks of our modern culture. The mystics believed that as soon as a 23rd letter would be discovered, that paradise would descend upon the earth and the world order would radically change forever, ushering in the arrival of the Mashiach, the Messiah. According to the Jewish tradition, God used the letters of the alphabet as a blueprint and a building block for the creation of the world. Now, the reason that the Jewish alphabet is written from right to left is because in the beginning of time, letters were chiseled on stone from right to left, unlike the Greek, Cyrillic, or Latin alphabets, which are written from left to right. Now, in this book, we explore the etymology, the evolution, and the folklore of each of those letters. Aleph. Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It makes the ah sound and it has the numeric value of 1. It is first found in 1500 BC in the Proto-Canaanite Canaanite alphabet and is represented in many ancient and modern languages. So in Sumerian, it would be Aluf, Akkadian, Alpu, Arabic, Alif, Phoenician, Aleph, Greek, Alpha, and in English, of course, it became the A. Now, the first representation of the Aleph is an ancient Phoenician figure of the letter depicting the horns of a bull, representing a yoke or a burden, as well as an instrument of agriculture. Now, legend has it that when God's decision to create the world with the second letter of the alphabet, the bet, Bereshit, bara, in the beginning God created, it became known throughout his domain that the Aleph was devastated. She stood all alone, bewailing her fate. And suddenly the voice of the Creator interrupted her grief. Aleph, why are you so quiet? To which the Aleph replied, Lord of the universe, I have no courage to speak up. After all, mine is the lowest numeric value. I am only 1. And to the letter Aleph, God said, You are 1, I am 1, and the Torah is 1. Not to worry. I will put you at the head of the alphabet. You will be the crown among the letters. And according to tradition, the Almighty himself came down to Mount Sinai to give the Jews the 10 Commandments and the Torah. And the 10 Commandments starts with the sentence, Anochi, Adonai Elohecha, I am your God. But Anochi actually derives from the Egyptian word Ancho or Anch, while the Hebrew word for I is Ani. Now, people say Amen, which originates with the Hebrew word Emunah, which of course starts with an Aleph. and the word emunah means belief. Now, words that begin with aleph are numerous. For instance, the Hebrew word emet. Emet, in Yiddish, we would say emes, begins with aleph and represents truth. Now, in Yiddish, we have a proverb about truth that seems very, very timely. We say in Yiddish, der emes starbt kein mol nicht. Es lebt, nor a paskudne leben. The truth never dies, but it lives a wretched life. And we all know that we've lived through years of questioning what is truth and what is not truth and what is false. Another important Yiddish word that starts with aleph is assimilatie, which means assimilation. Chaim Nachman Bialik, the famed Israeli poet, said that assimilation could be compared to an express train. At every station, it devours a large group of people. Now, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet is bet, or vet, with a numeric value of 2. Bet represents a bayit, which in Hebrew means a house or a home. And eventually the bet evolved into the Greek letter beta. Okay, so you can see the evolution of the letter B. Because its numeric value, well, let's see. God began creating the world with this letter, the letter bet. The Torah starts with the word bereshit, bereshit bara. In the beginning, God created. Because its numeric value is 2, the mystics emphasize that it represents 2 worlds, this world and the world to come. Now, our creation began before the actual creation. The Midrash, the post-Talmudic literature, states that God actually created many worlds. He would take one look at each new world he created, and then he would destroy all the previous worlds. Now, in Yiddish, when we refer to praying, we use the word that starts with the letter Beis, benchen, so benchen, to pray. But that actually comes from the Latin word benedicere, which means to bless. So we see the Latin root in the Yiddish word benchen. Another very interesting curiosity connected to the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the story of Bedlam, or Bethlehem, which is known as Bethlehem, which literally translates to the house of bread. Bet lechem, the house of bread. But the English word bedlam, noise and confusion, has its root in the word Bethlehem, Bethlehem, which was the name of the London Royal Lunatic Asylum. In the 15th century, the Bedlam Asylum was one of the most popular sightseeing spots of London. And for a modest fee, people could watch the inmates behind bars, much as we view animals in the zoo today. Today, of course, Bethlehem is still sometimes the center of Middle Eastern Bedlam. Now, during biblical times, people worshipped idols of the sun or the moon, including a pagan Canaanite god named Baal. Now, the only thing that has remained of Baal, which starts with a bet, are the following words both in Hebrew and in Yiddish. In Hebrew, we say Baal Habayit, or in Yiddish, we say Balaboz or Balaboste, which means the master or mistress of the house, a landlord, or the boss. So the word Baal, which was a pagan god, has actually stayed in the Hebrew language and Yiddish language as Baal Habayit. There are 2 Yiddish proverbs that illuminate the nature of the balabos, right? One of them goes, Hunger is a bezer balabos. Hunger is a very mean master. And oh, what happened? Somehow we ended up in the wrong place. And there is another Yiddish proverb that says, "Gut zu sein a balabos, as is do mitvos." So it's good to be the boss if you have the money. So Yiddish and Hebrew have used the balabos in many, many wonderful ways. The third letter of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet and Yiddish alphabet, is Gimel, which has a numeric value of 3 and represents a camel. In Hebrew, gamal. In Greek, gamma, right? The Yiddish word for God starts with a gimel, got. And the most ironic of Yiddish proverbs about God says, As Gott soll wohnen auf der Erd, wollt man ihm alle Fenster ausgehackt. Which means, if God lived on the earth, people would break all of his windows. Another Yiddish gimel word is gloz, which means glass. And there's a wonderful story which is called What Do You See? One day, a poor man came to his rabbi complaining, Rebbe, why are there so many poor people while others are so rich? And the rabbi said, Come with me to the window and tell me, what do you see? So the poor man looked out the window and he said, I see people, I see trees, I see flowers, birds, I see children. And the Rebbe replied, Come with me to the mirror. And now tell me, what do you see? And the man said, Well, I see my face, I see my nose, my eyes, I see my chin. And the Rebbe said, You see, my good man, both the window and the mirror are made out of gloz, glass. But the mirror's back is silvery, and so you see only yourself. The same goes for the wealthy. Sometimes a man like you and me, but when their pockets are full of silver and gold, sometimes they see only themselves. The fourth letter is Dalit, which has a numeric value of 4. In Hebrew, a delet represents a door. The dalet symbolizes security. Now, in Yiddish, the word for praying starts with a dalid, davenen, which actually derives from the Latin divinus, related to the divine and divinity. So once again, we see how Yiddish sometimes has Latin roots for very important words like davenen, to pray. The Koritzer Rebbe once said, I love to pray when the sun rises, before the world gets polluted with hatred and wrath. The fifth letter in the Hebrew alphabet and the Yiddish alphabet is the letter He, which has a numeric value of 5 and represents a little window or a fence. He is actually a letter of uncertain origin. The mystics believed that the He represented a window with bars. In the Kabbalah, it symbolizes the idea of love and passion. Rabbinic legend has it that with the power of 2 letters, 2 worlds were created. The lower world with the letter He and the upper world with the letter Yud. Now, with the letter He, God created the heaven and the earth, and with the letter Yud, he created the world to come. He is the first letter of the Yiddish word her, which in English means to hear. So there is a beautiful legend about being able to hear, and that is the legend of the Polish farmer. Many years ago in Poland, there was a Jew who decided to settle in Israel and become a farmer. So he approached a Polish farmer to teach him the skills of farming and how to work the soil. After the harvest, the Polish farmer lay down on the ground. He put his ear to the earth and he began listening. And the Jew asked him, "What do you hear?" And the peasant told him, "I hear the earth singing." So the Jew placed his ear to the ground and he tried to listen, but he heard nothing. He turned to the farmer and he asked, "Why do I hear nothing at all?" And the farmer smiled and replied, "You hear nothing because this is not your soil and not your land." So when that same Jew arrived in Israel, he became a farmer. And after the harvest, he placed his ear to the ground and he heard the earth singing, because this time it was his earth and his land. And what we find fascinating about this story is that same Jew who talked to the Polish farmer came with 1,000 years of Jewish history in Poland. 1,000 years the Jews lived in Poland side by side with the Polish farmers and the Polish tradesmen. And yet, even after 1,000 years, the land did not belong to the Jews. The next letter is in Hebrew Vav, in Yiddish Vov, and it has a numeric value of 6. Now, in the ancient form of Hebrew, Vav had the meaning of a hook, a peg, a symbol of unity and accord, compassion, and life. It also represents the tree of life because of its gentle character. So, a beautiful story is also told about the Yiddish word for worms, which starts with a vav. The Yiddish word is veremlach, or worms, little worms. A father says to his child, "Take a good look, my child, how the one above has set up everything. The birds lay eggs in their nests, and when the chicks pick at their shells, out come the little birds, and that's when the father bird and the mother bird begin to feed their young little worms. And they thank and praise the Lord for his exceptional goodness." And the wise child turned to his father and asked, "Father dear, do the little worms also thank and praise the Lord when the little birdies eat them up?" Our next letter is Zayin, with a numeric value of 7. It represents the word weapon and an ornament. The Hebrew word for weapon is klei zayin, which are weapons, and the letter Zayin corresponds to numerous ancient languages, among them Aramaic, Zana, Syriac, Zani, and Ethiopian, Zainat, which means pollution. Now, the primary characteristics of the letter Zayin is the sword, the hammer, and the bow, signifying symbols of power. Now, legend has it that the Zayin came before God and insisted that he create the world with him. After all, he represents the numeric value of 7. Through him, the day of Sabbath is observed. To which God replied, "I will not create the world with you, for you carry within you the sword and the spear and the lust for war." Now, the Yiddish word Zayin starts with a zayin. And the Yiddish word zayin, zu sein, means to be. So this brings to mind the most famous theatrical monologue ever written by the greatest Jewish writer whose works have been translated into every language in the world. And I would like to perform this monologue, his most famous monologue, but I'd like to do it in the language in which it was originally written. It goes something like this. Zu sein oder nicht zu sein, oder da liegt der Hund begraben. Dies ist etwas nobler, euch zu stehen die Pfeilen beugens von dem paskudnem Geudel, oder sich stellen entgegen dem Jam mit Zores. Und einmal vor allem macht Eck, Asof, Potteranese genug, fertig, ich hab schon nicht kein Keuer. That, of course, was William Shakespeare's monologue from Hamlet, To Be or Not to Be. Now, I've been told that Shakespeare was not Jewish, although I find that very hard to believe. So, our next letter is the Hebrew letter Chet. In Yiddish, we say Ches, the numeric value of 8, and it represents a fence. Now, this letter actually stems from the Assyrian, the Old Hebrew. The letter represents or resembles a gate, and it is also sometimes a symbol of violence. Now, interestingly enough, the Hebrew word chai starts with the letter chet, and that represents life, while achaye, chaya in Hebrew, chaye in Yiddish, represents a living creature, animal, and sometimes violence. In Yiddish, a wilde chaye means a wild animal. Now, the Hebrew word for pig is chazir. In Yiddish, we say chazer, and that, of course, also starts with the letter ches. Now, pigs, of course, are not kosher animals, and they are forbidden both in the Jewish and Muslim dietary laws. But there is actually a very fascinating story that is told of a plague that accosted the pigs in Eastern Europe during the Middle Ages. Now, when a plague struck the pigs of a shtetl, a town in Eastern Europe, a little village where Jews lived among Gentiles, the Jews would immediately begin to fast. They fasted because of the superstition that the angel of death, when collecting his victims, might skip a Jewish home and instead take a pig whose beating heart might confuse him. The Jews somehow knew instinctively that the pigs had a similar heart to humans. So, for several decades now, we know that pigs' hearts, the valves, the insulin, is used all over the world while waiting for transplants and medication. So it's fascinating that the Jews in the old Shtetlach somehow instinctually knew that the hearts of pigs were so similar to the hearts of human beings that if they fasted during a plague, that the angel of death would take the pigs and not the humans. Now, the most devastating word that starts with the letter chet is the Yiddish word and the Hebrew word churban, or in Yiddish, churb, which translates as the destruction. Now, that word is very often used to describe the Holocaust. It's also referred to as the Shoah, the Shoah, a Shoah. But the word Holocaust actually comes from the Greek, which refers to a sacrificial offering, which is wholly consumed by fire. Holocaust. This expression is not actually rooted in Jewish history nor tradition. It comes from Middle English, from the Old French, Holocauste, via late Latin, from the Greek holocauston, and the holos, hol, kaustos, burned. All right. So once again, we see that sometimes words that come into Yiddish and Hebrew come from very different roots. Now, the Churban, rooted in Jewish history for thousands of years, reminds us of the destruction of ancient Jerusalem, of the lost Jewish life, our people, and our cultural heritage. The temple was destroyed. During all of our exiles, we have lived among strangers. We were tiny specks on the maps of the Middle East and Asia, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, Lithuania, Czechoslovakia, the Carpathian Mountains, Romania, Bessarabia, among so many other places where the Jews lived and resided. A Jewish world where poor little Jewish towns were awash with a rich Jewish landscape and also awash in poverty, all lost in the many holocausts since the destruction of the Holy Temple, the Inquisitions, the diaspora, and the Shoah. Now, there is a story told about Peter Malkin, an Israeli secret agent. The story is it was the day when, and this is the story that he actually tells. It was the day when we caught Adolf Eichmann in Argentina. The plane was waiting for us while we carried the murderer onto the plane in order to take him back with us to Israel, where he would stand trial. I held his hand in mine, and I didn't stop thinking, how could it be? 6 million Jews waiting at the trains to be deported. I couldn't imagine it. So I turned to him and I said, I have seen that you have a nice looking little boy back where we got you. He reminds me of another child who could have been his little brother, my sister's little boy, with one exception. My sister's little boy is dead. And Eichmann bit his lip and he replied, Is it my fault that your sister's little boy was Jewish? The next letter is Tet. Tet, in Yiddish we say Tes. It's a numeric value of 9. Tet represents clay, dust, and earth, good and evil, life and death, and it's also a symbol of poverty. Now, the letter Tet or Tes occurs in many Semitic languages. It also symbolizes a snake, both because of its elasticity and the state of its curves. Clay and dust are the elements with which the world was created. The letter also first appears in the Bible in one of the most important words, Tov, good. And God saw that it was good, Tov. Yom Shlishi, Pa'amayim Ki Tov. Tuesday is the third day of the week in Israel, Yom Shlishi. And on the third day of creation, God said, Pa'amayim Ki Tov. He said, Ki Tov, because it's good. it's good. So Tuesday is generally thought of as twice as good. And as we come to the close of our lecture today, we have the Yiddish word for tea, which is te, and starts with the letter tes. It means tea, of course, in English. And in the early 1900s, there was a publication, a satiric journal that was in New York from 1909 to 1927. It was called Der Größer Kundes, which means the big joke or the great stick. And this particular image was published in that magazine, and it introduced the world, the Jewish world, to die neueste Sorten chinesische Tee, the newest sorts of Chinese tea. And those, of course, were liberté, liberty, equalité, equality, and fraternité, fraternity. And so, with that, I am very grateful to Chaim for allowing us to be a part of this. And I'd like to invite Chaim back while I thank, of course, all of our sponsors. And of course, we couldn't do much of the work we do nowadays, which has been so enormous over, especially over the last year since COVID. We've been celebrating our ability to reach out to the world on Zoom, on Facebook and YouTube, where we are live right now, both on YouTube and on Facebook and here in our Zoom. And we have been doing enormous amounts of programming. So, upcoming next week on Tuesday, we are going to be doing a program which I call Schmoozing with Avi. And I invite people that I appreciate, respect, and love to tell me about the things they're working on. And we will be introducing a playwright, an actress, a Tony nominated director from New York. Her name is Eleanor Risa. She's a very dear friend of ours. I've known her since the early 80s. She's very young. I met her when she was just a child. No, I'm just kidding. But we are going to be introducing Eleanor because on April 7th and 8th, YI, the Yiddishkeit Initiative, will be presenting 2 days of YI Remembers Yom HaShoah. And we will be presenting play readings and concerts and lectures, all related to the experience of remembering and appreciating the Holocaust. And how do we today, in the year 2021, deal with Holocaust awareness and education? Eleanor actually wrote a play called The Last Survivor. And she also wrote a play which I'll be presenting called The Last One, an epilogue, where she imagines the last survivor, the actual last one. Who will that be? And unfortunately, we are living in an age where within the next 10, 20, 30 years, perhaps, we will lose the last of the survivors. And so, what do we do then? So we are going to have panel discussions with some very prominent individuals from all over the country, representing not only the survivors, the Holocaust Museum, the United Nations, refugees. We are going to have 3Gs, the third generation, the grandchildren of those survivors. And so we are going to try and understand what it means to live in this particular age and deal with these issues. And so we wish you, we hope that you'll join us and come to see our programming. And I am now going to invite all of those from the Feldenkrais program and the Miller Center, those we've invited to join us on this Zoom. I'm inviting you all to join us as panelists, you may turn on your videos and you may unmute yourselves. And I am going to invite my mother, Professor Miriam Hoffman, to join us and answer any questions that you may have. Everything that you heard tonight comes from her book, Legends of the AlefBet. And obviously we don't end at the letter Tet. We go all the way to the letter Taf, which is Sof, the end of the Yiddish and Hebrew alphabet. So please feel free, all of you. We have 18 of you right now. So we have Chai people in the room, and I'm inviting all of you to join us. So please feel free to turn on your videos. And if you have any questions, oh my goodness, my dear, dear Professor John Soliday is here with us. Oh my goodness. I was, of course, a student at the University of Miami, and I am very honored to have with us here tonight my dear Professor John Soliday, who taught me so very much about acting and directing. And he is definitely one of the most important people. There he is, John Soliday, one of the most important influences in my life, to whom I owe much of my career to. So, John, you're here. I'm so excited. Um, so here we are. Let me actually. There's one more person, and now they have been invited. Oh, and now we also have another one. I'm trying to get everybody in here before I stop my share. I'll go back to it after. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here, and we're very grateful to have you here. And so, Mom, why don't you come and join us? All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, modern technology. Here she is herself, Professor Miriam Hoffman, the author of Legends of the Aleph-Bet, the Origins of the Alphabet. So,
Avi,
yes, Chaim.
I have two requests and I have a question for your mother.
Okay,
The
very
two
good.
requests from you, first of all, thank you very much. This
Of
was
course,
really a treat.
always.
But
Yeah.
the first request, please tell the audience where they can find the information about your programming.
Of course. We have a website. Our website is YI, the letter Y, the letter I, Yiddishkeit Initiative, Why I Love Jewish.org. If you go to whyilovejewish.org, you can learn about all of our programs, everything we do. We are a nonprofit organization, we are a public charity, so we do accept donations, and all your donations are tax deductible. You can join Chaim and the Miller and Feldenkrais programs and the Miller Center in becoming a sponsor of our work. There you will find all of our events. You'll find links to our YouTube and our Facebook, and we have over 100 free programs that you can watch, concerts with Grammy award-winning musicians and Broadway actors. All my friends who I call up and I say, listen, we're doing this thing. I'd love for you to participate. And luckily, I'm very privileged to have a lot of very, very well-known friends who love the work we're doing and join us. So please go to our YouTube channel, go to our website, whyilovejewish.org. You can buy my mother's books there, all of them. We have many books. We have not only the book that I did last time, which is A Breed Apart, which is Reflections of a Young Refugee, my mother's memoir. We also have the book that I'll be doing at the end of the month, the lecture, Curious Rabbinic Tales. Now, there is also, believe it or not, a Legends of the Aleph-Bet coloring book, which apparently is a huge seller. Coloring books are very popular today, apparently, all over the world. And we've been selling hundreds of these coloring books, both for adults and for children. Obviously, Legends of the Aleph-Bet. And if you happen to read Hebrew, and Yiddish. You can buy my mother's textbook, The Key to Yiddish, which is 700 pages. And this is the textbook that is used by teachers all over the world who teach the Yiddish language. Because my mother was professor of Yiddish at Columbia University for 25 years. But enough of me. I
Okay.
really would love for you
My
to ask
second,
my mother.
wait. My
Oh,
second
right, Chaim, you
request,
had a question.
my
Yes.
second request, in one of your performances, you shared with the audience, and I was there, a song that your mother taught you, perhaps the first song she ever taught you about the AlefBet, right?
You know, it's interesting. It's actually not. It's a whole show that my mother wrote. Mom, you want to tell them what was it called? Aleph Avremel. When I was 4
can you
years
share
old.
with us one of the songs of that performance?
Sure, but I have to tell you the story because that was the first show that I ever starred in. My mother wrote a musical for me to star in when I was 4 years old in Yiddish. Aleph Avremel. Aleph, of course, is the first letter of my name. Avremel, Avi, Avrom. And I played a very brave little boy who goes into the forest and encounters a very angry Bays bear. A Bays, of course, is the second letter of the alphabet, Bays, Bet, and a bear starts with the letter Bays. And so the Bays bear wanted to eat Avremel, Aleph Avremel. And so Aleph Avremel is gegangen in Wald. Bays hat a Bär in der Sein, dorten bald. And the bear says, Nyam, 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 Avremel. Du bist doch a Siesinke, you're so sweet. Nyam, nyam, nyam. Du bist doch a Gittinke, you're so good. Nyam, nyam, nyam. Ich kann dich aufessen. I could eat you up. And of course, then brave little Avremel takes his axe and he chops the bear into tiny little pieces and feeds him to all the other letters of the Yiddish alphabet. Dalid, Hey, Vav. And that was the show. And my mother wrote it for me to star in when I was 4 years old. And I still remember it as if it was yesterday.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Now the
Thank you
question for your mother.
Yes.
What made you write this book?
Aleph Avremel.
No, the book.
Yeah. Oh, this book,
Aleph, the Legends of the Alphabet.
What made you write Legends of the Alphabet, Mom?
I deal with the legends and the alphabets all my life. And I love every letter. And I have it, they're all in color.
Yes.
And so I found all the legends of the alphabets and I wrote the book.
My mother did years, decades of research in her curricula for Columbia University. And so she found, and many of the stories in the Rabbinic Tales book, are about the rabbis. So when she was studying the rabbis, she found the stories around the letters of the alphabet. And so she collected all these stories, and eventually she put them all into not only her Key to Yiddish, but also in a separate book that was dedicated to the letters of the alphabet, of the AlefBet. The other thing that's really beautiful in this book, and you saw it in the presentation, are these beautiful illustrations. My mother discovered, Mom, you want to tell them about Zuckerman, where you found him in the Evo? My mother is very modest. In the YIVO organization in New York, in the archives, in 1919, they found the artwork of this incredible artist named Ben-Tsiyon Zuckerman. And he basically created these beautiful depictions of every single letter of the AlefBet. And so this was an opportunity to bring back his beautiful, beautiful artwork. Here's the letter Yud. We didn't get to the letter Yud. But if you go to our website, we actually sell merchandise. You know what? I can actually show it to you.
Are we selling this book?
Yes, of course, we're selling this book and everything else. We have tote bags, and every tote bag has all the different letters of the Zuckerman AlefBet. So if you know the letter that starts your Jewish name, you can have a tote bag like I do with the letter Aleph, with Avron or Avi. And so we actually sell a lot of merchandise on our website that deal with all of this work that we've discovered, these magnificent serigraphs, these magnificent pieces of artwork from 1919. And so Legends of the AlefBet became a book that, gave us an opportunity not only to share my mother's stories, but also all of the beautiful artwork, both by Zuckerman and by Michoel Muchnik, who is considered today one of the greatest Hasidic artists in the world today. He's actually the resident artist of the Chabad Lubavitch in Brooklyn. And he agreed to let us use his artwork in our books. And it's all in Legends of the AlefBet.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
Please.
Avi, does your mother have a favorite story?
Mom, do you have a favorite
All
story?
my stories are favorite stories.
Mom, who do you love more, me or my brother? Right.
Not fair.
No,
but
Avi, do you have a favorite story?
Well, I actually purposely put in the story of the Polish farmer and the Jewish farmer, because in a way that really is one of my favorites. There are many stories. I mean, I could look through and probably pick out, almost at random, some of these amazing stories. But that particular story, I think, was the most profound for me. My mother used to tell me that story when I was growing up. The idea that my grandparents came from Poland. They came from the city of Lodz. My mother, although she was born in Siberia, actually comes from the city of Lodz. And what I learned from my mother and through my own research, of course, is that the Jews were part of Polish culture for 1,000 years.
Yes.
We were so instrumental in creating the culture of Europe and America. I taught a class at the University of Miami called Yiddish Theater, the Foundation of Modern Culture. And it's my belief that Yiddish and the world of the immigrants from Europe in the 1880s and early 1900s really were responsible for creating everything we think of today. Including Broadway and Hollywood and Tin Pan Alley and comedy and, writing and directing and producers. So many of them came out of that world of Yiddish. But in Poland, for 1,000 years, we were side by side with the Poles. And yet, even after, through all those years, the Jews were never considered residents or equals or, equal citizens. And so when that Polish farmer said, sure, you can't hear the music because it's not your soil, it's not your land. And then only after 1948, when Israel was founded and we had our own land, that Jewish farmer was able to go to Israel, toil the land, and till the land, and toil on the land, put his ear to the ground, and
he heard the music.
So to me, that story is probably one of my favorites.
Avi, I want to contribute to this story another version.
Sure.
Which I heard from a man called Dulcin, who was the president of the World Jewish Congress and World Zionist Organization. He told the story that when he was a child, he was standing in the synagogue with his father in Poland, and his father was praying and really pleading with God to allow the rain to come. And Dulcin said, I was looking outside, it was raining cats and dogs. So I turned to my father and I said, Papa, why are you asking so hard? Why are you pleading so hard for rain? It's raining outside. And he says his father turned to him and said, Leibale, this rain is not ours.
Yeah.
Same motif.
Yeah, same motif. You know, I one of the things that we teach in our conversational Yiddish classes that my mother and I teach now, and for those of you who don't know, you can see them on our website. We teach 3 courses now: Yiddish Fun 01, Fun 02, and Fun 03. And we take the stories from my mother's books, from the Key to Yiddish, from the legends, from the rabbinic tales, and we weave them into a conversational course for people to be able to learn a bissel Yiddish and learn how to say certain words or sentences, proverbs. I love the proverbs. Wenn Gott wollt gewohnt auf der Erde, wollt mit dem Eis gehackte Fenster. Alle Fenster ausgehackt, excuse me, ever the teacher. If God lived on the earth, they would blow out, they would break all his windows. To me, that is the essence of Yiddish language, the brilliance, the genius of Yiddish language and culture. And so, this is why we've dedicated our organization, and with your help, Chaim, we've been able to bring so much of this work to the world. And what we've learned with COVID, which is, a horrible, horrible plague, a magefa, magefa in Hebrew. What we've learned is that actually with Zoom, we've been able to bring the whole world together to enjoy this. I never would have imagined, if you would have told me a year and a half ago that I would be doing Zooms, concerts that would be seen by hundreds of thousands of people all around the world, I would have said, you're crazy. You have no idea what you're talking about. And yet here we are, a year and a half later. Our programs have now been seen. One concert alone, we did a concert we called it Klezmer in Quarantine, because we were in quarantine. And we called it Yiddish Tangos. We sang tangos in Yiddish. 120,000 people watched that concert. Since then, our programs have been viewed by well over 500,000 people. So, Chaim, we should be very proud of ourselves that together we've been able to bring our programs to over 500,000 people all over the world. And even when COVID is over, we've now realized that this avenue is still open for us. Even if we go back to doing a live lecture at the Miller Center, hopefully someday soon, halavai, halavai, we can still present it on Zoom to the world and stream it live. Right now, we are streaming live, not only with the people in the room right now, but on Facebook and on YouTube, where we have had tens of thousands of views for our programs. So I am very encouraged by the idea that even after COVID, we will still be able to maintain this international relationship with those who love Jewish culture, who love Yiddishkeit, who love the Yiddish language, and the Jewish contributions to the world.
So are there any other questions or comments before we adjourn?
I need to say hello to Joan Kastner.
Oh, thank you.
Because Avi was very kind to talk about that relationship that you always have between someone who's a few years older and therefore is a teacher, and who is a teacher only because of the students that pass through them. And all of them are special, but I don't actually tune in their Zoom meetings very often. So Avi, thank you. And Joan is the reason that my middle daughter, Kristen, became Kristen. Joan was there when Kristen was dealing with dyslexia and learning disabilities at that time.
Anxiety and depression.
Yeah, Great Depression, and to
People
the
could
point
show
where
the
you were
snow
worried
right.
about the loss of life. And Joan came in, and before the computer made being dyslexia less of a problem, but Joan came in and saved her. So Joan, thank you again, and it's very nice to say that publicly. And Avi will say it for me, I'm sure, in Yiddish that you'll understand. I have absolutely no facility for picking up foreign languages, Avi, or I would be sitting at your feet. I know you could save me, but I've been through it so many times, not Yiddish, but other languages, and I'm a real schmuck in that area. So
You're already speaking Yiddish.
So on this
But
happy
John,
note,
hold on, wait a minute, Chaim. But John,
I've opened a can of worms, Chaim. We're going to be here all evening.
No. But
if
John,
any of you want to leave before the conversion, feel free.
Don't be so modest, because you've traveled all over the world to watch theater in foreign languages.
Yes, I
if
have.
I'm not mistaken, didn't you used to go to Romania?
I have seen plays from Romania, but not in Romania.
Okay.
So I have in Poland and Hungary and Moscow, Russia, Leningrad, but all of Europe, almost every summer. So this last summer was the first time in 23 years I didn't spend my summer trekking with a group of young people through the old world. But yes, I never had. It's very interesting. It's like foreign films. If it's good, you actually don't need the language. You're sorry you don't have it, but it's like really good opera. I mean, even in English, how often do you understand? That may be me, but I'm grasping at the footnotes, but emotionally and in terms of the visual storytelling, I have loved and been incredibly influenced by things every year that I've seen in a language I had no clue what it was.
Right. It's amazing.
well, on this very, very happy note, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us tonight. Avi, when is your next lecture? I don't have the date in front of me.
April 29th, I believe.
April 29th, and that's about the tales.
That is Curious Rabbinic Tales.
Yeah.
Curious Rabbinic Tales, the shortest tall story.
Great. So
And
April
it's just a
29th
wonderful book.
at 7 p.m. I wish all of you Chag Sameach, happy Easter, enjoy the coming weekend. All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Love you, Miriam.
And I'm going to let us go with our
Hashem Dank
with
and
a,
Toda Rabba.
with a thank you to our sponsor.
Hi, John.
Bye, Miriam. Bye, Avi.